I'd just like to introduce Kate briefly. Kate's I guess you could say, a certified life coach based in Melbourne. Kate focuses on coaching and teaching meditation, human potential coaching, helping people work from the inside out and how to get through the layers of who they are and developing a strong sense of self. Today, I think it might be appropriate to discuss things like, meditation and mindfulness, and go from there. Kate's made a career change herself. I think Kate's very appropriately positioned to give young people advice on, at the very least, choosing how to choose a career and how to work through some of the pressures that we inevitably face when deciding what we want to choose and why we're doing it. Thanks so much for joining us, Kate. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Great. I love the background you've got there. Are you at home or are you in your office?
Yeah, just at home. Yeah, in my office.
Oh, wow. So you work from a home office?
Yeah, home office, yeah. So I work between my home office and a co-working space as well. So, when you work on your own, I think it's good to have some social, so a way to be social. So, yeah, I work out of a co-working space a few times a week when it's not COVID.
Yeah, yeah. And when you are working at home, like say during the day, and you're by yourself, is there any things that you do to kind of break the day up, so that you're not sitting in a room alone? Do you go out for a walk? Do you write, or do you transcribe emails? Do you have a walk around the park, get some fresh air, or is there anything that you do to kind of break your day up?
Yeah. I usually like to start my day a little bit later. So I'll start my day with a bit of meditation, and then I'll go for a walk to my local parklands for about an hour and a half. That's kind of my normal routine. And then I'll come home and I'll start work maybe around 10:30. So my day kind of starts a bit slower, and then I work for a couple of hours, have some lunch, and then generally work through to the end of the day with a meditation somewhere in the afternoon as well. But I found after really paying attention to my natural rhythms and how I work best and when I work best, that, the thing that everybody tells you about, mornings are the best time and get your best thing, your most important thing done in the morning, that really doesn't work for me. I'm actually at my best kind of somewhere between 4 and 6 p.m. So I kind of flip my day.
Does it change? Like, do some days you perform, do some periods of the year you perhaps perform better in the mornings? I'll give you an example. Sometimes I go through phases where I go to the gym in the mornings, and then I go through phases where my workout's at the best at night. Do it change for you or anything like that?
Yeah, it does. It does from time to time. I think my general rhythm is, that the afternoons are better, but absolutely it can change depending on the day and the week. And I think what's important is that we just pay attention to ourselves. And, I think we've been shoved into the 9 to 5 for so long that we've forgotten really what each of our own natural kind of way of working is. Yeah.
Do you know anything about the current? I heard in some of the Scandinavian countries like Sweden, that they've reduced their full-time working weeks and stuff like that. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I do know a little bit about that. I mean, I have heard that, I can't remember which country it is, but that they've gone down to, I think one of them even went down to a 4-day work week. And it's interesting because we're starting to see certain companies catch on here. I actually, I run a conference called Work Life X, and we had someone come and speak last conference about his company who went down to a 5-hour workday. So still working 5 days a week, but they shifted things so they only had to work 5 hours. And that was off the back of him actually having to look after his wife who had cancer, and having to pull back his hours, and then realizing that it's actually possible, and you can get far more done, or just as much done, in 5 hours if you're really focused. There's also some companies in New Zealand that I know are doing a 4-day work week. So it's starting to catch on.
And finding good or at least comparable results.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's this misconception that, the harder and the longer that we work, the more productive we are. But, there's actually a lot of research to show that we need to balance work with periods of rest and renewal to get the best out of us. So, I'm all for the rest and the renewal.
I am as well, massively. It's interesting. Society tells you, you kind of watch some of these pages, like these motivational pages, especially for the young blokes. It's like work hard, grind, hustle, man, 100-hour work week.
Oh, yeah.
And look, in fairness, Elon Musk runs, three, multi-billion-dollar companies, Solar City, Tesla, and SpaceX. He works tremendous amounts of hours, and he probably still delegates a lot of it off. Um, but I think, me personally, I personally, I used to work 6, 7 days a week as a dentist, and now I work 3 days a week. And everything's similar, if not better. And I actually perform better because when I go into work, I've got a real spring in my step. I'm rested, I'm rejuvenated. And I guess that leads us to the conversation we were having the other days. You're a bit of a Tim Ferriss fan yourself.
Yes, yep.
And what's the name of the book that we both were discussing the other day?
The 4-Hour Work Week. Yeah, that was a really seminal one for me. Like when it was probably the thing that, or one of the books that shifted something in my mind to make me want to shift my career. And I think there's a story in that book about the businessman and the fisherman. And I won't go into the story, but basically it kind of gave me the aha that we don't want to be working towards, retirement sometime in our 70s or whatever and working hard so we can have a great retirement and great life then. It's all about how can you live a great life now.
Yeah.
And I think certainly the way that I've tried to evolve my working life over the last number of years has all been about, living well now. And I think one of the things that comes along with that, though, is really tapping into what's really important to you. And I think, when you're young, especially, I think it's harder to really be on your own path in terms of what's important. And it's easy to think that money's the most important thing and lots of money is the most important thing. And I'm not saying money's not important. We all need a certain amount of money to live. But, we look at certain ideals and certain ways of living or people who are super successful and go, oh, I want that. I need that. I've got to make X amount of money. I've got to be a lawyer. I've got to be an accountant. I've got to be something that's going to earn me the big bucks. But often it's, that stuff doesn't actually bring us happiness. And when people really tune into what's important, it's often things like family and friends and, time, leisure time and travel and relationships and, doing purposeful work and things like that. And that's not necessarily always about money. So
when
for me, it was...
Discover that? At what age would you think that you kind of had that bit of a eureka light bulb moment?
Yeah, I probably would have been in my late 20s, like somewhere between 26 and 28, I think.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. So I had been working in the big corporate world for a while and doing really well there. And it's just like something felt a bit off. It felt like the big corporate was saying all the right things and doing all the right things, but weren't really living up to the values that they espoused. And so, it started to... a few things happened to kind of make me go, oh, this isn't really right for me and I need to be doing something a bit different. But look, it's an ongoing challenge. Like I always have to remind myself that the money's not the thing that's the most important thing. And I think it's interesting, actually, COVID's been really interesting for that because, a lot of us have taken a hit to our income and I certainly did, but it was great because it made me realize how little I actually need to live and to live happily, and that, the money I had in my pocket was not the thing that was making me happy. So, yeah.
Well, what about people that would sit there and say, oh, Kate, it's easy for you to say, I've got, say, multiple kids to look after, I've got a home loan or anything like that. What would your response to that be?
Yeah, it's all relative. So, it is, everybody has to know their own limits and what's possible for them. But I do say as well that first you need to look after yourself and your family. You've just got to do that. And if that means doing a job that's not, lighting you up, or that is, it's just about earning enough money to keep the wheels turning, then if that's what you need to do, great, do it, no problem. But if it's stressing you out, if it's not lighting you up, if it's not also helping you have a great life, then I would say that it's always possible to transition into something more fulfilling, less stressful, if that's what you really want. There's amazing stories from all over the world of people who have experienced hardship, who have found ways to create a better life for themselves. And I'm not saying that everyone can do it necessarily quickly, but you've got to, I always say to my coaching clients who are wanting to kind of change career, first you have to believe what you want.
Yeah.
Then you worry about how you're going to make it happen. Because if you try and kind of combine, do you think it's possible with do I want it, you're not even going to let yourself believe that you want it because you think it's not possible.
Yeah.
So, but I've rarely met a person who, when they really set their sights on the thing that they really want and go and chase it with everything that they've got, have not been able to make it happen for themselves.
Yeah. So can you tell us some of the considerations that you had to make when you made the transition for working in a big corporate firm over to being a life coach?
Yeah, well, I actually had a transition in between that too. So I went, working from the big corporate, and then I went to more freelancing and contracting and working for myself in more of the corporate arena, but still on my own. And then from there, I transitioned more into coaching. And so, for me, when I transitioned out of corporate though and wanted to go and work kind of as myself in the freelance kind of consulting arena, that was at the time, the way that I kind of went about that was I saved my pennies so that when I needed to leave my corporate job, I had a bit of a something to lean on. Yep. Yeah, and I was entering a newish industry at that stage, and I had planned to, to do work experience and to maybe volunteer and to do whatever I needed to do to get into that industry. And I fortunately happened to get a lucky break and get a paid role that I got to kind of practice and learn on the job. But I think that having that backup of the savings was really important. And again, when I talk to my clients about transitioning careers, there's lots of different ways to do it, but you have to be able to create some space for yourself to make that transition. And how people create that space can look like something completely different depending on who they are, their life situation, their risk appetite. For some people, it's saving up and quitting their job. For some people, it's going part-time. For some people, it's maybe, cutting back their hours to, part-time hours in a day. For some people, it's, getting someone to look after the kids in the evening so they can work on the side hustle at night. There's no right way to do it. It's what's right for you, but it's about kind of going, all right, well, what is my risk appetite? What is my life situation? What do I need to carve out to create this space to make the change? And what am I prepared to do as well? Because, a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, I really want to change career and do something completely different. But then you ask them, well, are you willing to do the study? Are you willing to do whatever else? And sometimes the answer is no, in which case, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Comes down to, hunger as well, doesn't it? And when I originally, from Melbourne, I moved to Tasmania to start a dental practice. And when I reflect, it probably would have been a wise idea. And I actually tried to, but no one would give me a job down here. Funnily enough, I was about to become a competitor of theirs. Or competitor, I hate to say that word. Should be a collegial-based industry, but there is an element of business competition. Nonetheless, I had to make a shift down here, and it would have been a lot easier if I still had some kind of income while starting up my practice, because it was extraordinarily tough. But I was willing to move wherever I had to start this practice and to make it happen. And that moving away from, I moved to a place where I didn't know anyone at all. I was super hungry and had a very extraordinarily large risk appetite, took out a large loan. But I don't recommend that for everyone, because it's not for everyone, and not everyone's cut out. Not everyone's cut out to be, an employer or anything like that. So it really depends on the person and making the right decision for you based on your own circumstances. Things could have been a lot different if I had children, family, X, Y, Z. So for those young people that are watching that don't have commitments like a home mortgage, family, kids, you're in an extraordinarily flexible position and a versatile position where you can make those you can take more of a risk and have less to lose, essentially, less mouths
Yeah,
to feed.
absolutely. Yeah.
Can you tell me
Something
about?
else.
Sorry. Yeah.
I was going to say something else that I think's a good one too is like if you're already doing something and it's not working for you and you want to make a change and you're really hating what you're doing, I often say to people, it can sometimes be helpful to get a transition job. So because sometimes if you're wanting to move into something, say particularly something more purpose driven or something that you've got to do some study for or something like that, it's going to be a long journey, but you also don't want to be just hating where you are in the moment. And sometimes it can be great to just like, go and get some kind of other job that is going to pay the bills, but you don't require as much headspace for it. So whether that's, going and working in a cafe or whatever it might be for you that, isn't quote unquote easy job, because I think what's easy for all of us is different.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, just something that gives you the freedom and the headspace to focus on the next step.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty it's pretty valuable. Valuable tip there is, I mean, you do have to keep some kind of money rolling in. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be extraordinary amounts of money, but you do have to pay the bills, and that's life. And life isn't necessarily cheap, particularly in those bigger cities. Tasmania is a lot cheaper. Rent's a lot cheaper. But
Food's not though. Food's so expensive in Tassie.
is it? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Sure where you.
we did a trip a couple of years ago around Tassie. I couldn't believe how expensive the food was, but it was delicious, so it's all right.
Perhaps, yeah, perhaps it's the perhaps it was the tourist spots as well.
Maybe, probably.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your experience, bit of a life changing experience when you were 28? I was actually speaking to a gentleman the other day, and he had a life changing near death experience, and I've actually had one myself. I've had a couple myself as well. It's actually funny the patterns I'm drawing between these, people like yourself and me who are really valuing that life balance, and then its relationship with the near death experience. Are you able to share that with us? I think it'll be quite valuable for the youngins to have a listen to.
Yeah, sure. So when I was around about, I think it was 28, I ended up with blood clots. So I had a deep vein thrombosis in my leg, which kind of ran from about my ankle up to my hip, and I had pulmonary embolisms in my lungs, which are like blood clots in the lungs. And it's one of those things that if they hadn't have picked it up when they did, like that's the type of thing that can lead to a stroke, it can lead to a heart attack. And I ended up in hospital for a couple of weeks while the clots discoagulated. I don't know if that's quite a word, but yeah, I was on anticoagulants for a while, and then for the rest of the kind of the year as well. And I had a lot of people say to me during that experience, "Oh, you're really young for this to have happened to you, because it's not something that generally happens to a 28-year-old, and you're really lucky." And I was so lucky because if things hadn't have worked out how they had have, could have been a stroke or death or whatever it was, and it would have completely changed my life, no matter whatever happened. So that was a moment for me where it made me really reflect on my life, because I think it was the first time in my life that I didn't feel that invincibility that you do when you're young. Yeah. And it's not like I hadn't thought about, death or the fact that I could die. It's not like I really thought that I was never going to die, but it was the first time I had the real visceral experience of what my own mortality meant. And so I went kind of back to my corporate job after that, but it was really clear that it just wasn't right anymore. And it wasn't right before that either, but I think I was going through the motions, and I was on the success train, getting promoted and all that kind of thing. And it took something as big as that for me to realize, oh, this isn't me. Like it just doesn't feel right. And that was the very scientific explanation for why I had to get out of it, was that it just didn't feel right. And and then that's kind of what set off my journey of changing to kind of more meaningful work that I felt was more aligned to who I was.
And how long did you research into, doing new positions before you actually made that leap? Like, did you have to have everything else organized in your life, and then you were like, all right, I'm going to actually just look into it now, and then you looked into it more and more, and you like, yeah.
To be honest, I can't fully remember how long, but I don't think it was all that long. I'm one of the kind of people that once an opportunity or a change needs to be made, I usually make it pretty quickly, and unless I'm not sure. But I was pretty sure, so it didn't take long. I would say at most maybe a month or so.
Yeah.
To really kick that off. And it was more just, doing research into the types of organisations I maybe wanted to work for and how I would make the transition, and, talking to people, finding people I knew in my network that were working in that area to kind of bail up and say, hey, how does this all work? How do I get in? Who can you hook me up with?
Yeah.
So all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's quite a rapid. A month is quite a rapid time to make that kind of change, and
yeah, it might have been a couple of months. I can't remember exactly, but yeah.
It's still quite rapid. I mean, how long had you trained for to work your way up in the firm, in the corporate firm?
Well, in terms of
study as well.
Yeah, so I studied business entrepreneurship, and so that was a 3-year degree. And I'd studied other things before that, but I kind of went back to uni in my mid-20s. And yeah, so I did that, and then I'd probably been working at the firm for like 3 years to get to where I was.
So you'd racked up a bit of a head start. You'd spent a good, if not most, part of your 20s building up to something, and then you just made a flip. I mean, it takes tremendous amounts of guts and spirit, because it's not just the hex debt and the time you've spent doing it. It's the pressure and the expectations from your partner, from your family as well. I mean, I can think, I'll tell you from my experience as a dentist, I still think I probably do have pressure from my dad in a way to be a dentist, and X, Y, Z, and it perhaps it helps float his ego in a way and makes him proud to tell his friends that I'm a dentist. But then I have to ask myself the question: is that something that I want to do? It's my life. So there's some things. I mean, how was that? How was that for you to consider with your family? Do you think there was an element of disappointment from them or anything like that? Or do you think there was tremendous support?
I don't think so. Definitely not disappointment. My family's always been incredibly supportive of my various moves and choices. Like when I finished high school, I actually studied theatre first, which is obviously not a career that is going to earn you bucket loads of money. And my mum always told me, she told me years later that she was actually terrified that I was planning to go into theatre, but she was going to support me anyway. And I mean, I made the choice not to do it in the end. But when I made this choice to kind of move out of this arena, I think my parents were a little bit nervous for me, but they know me well enough to know that I always kind of land on my feet, and that I can hold my own, and that when I put my mind to something, I tend to go out and get it. So, and also my dad was an example of a career changer as well. So he, similar kind of, I suppose, journey was he actually back in the day, excuse me, was in the army, was conscripted to the army, and after that ended up going and working in transport and logistics and doing quite well out of that, and was kind of working his way up the corporate ladder. And but he really loved sailing, and an opportunity came up to buy a yacht rigging business and to basically tinker with boats all day as a job. And so he bought that business quite just a bit before I was born, actually, I think. And he's been doing that ever since. And, one of those stories where he's never worked a day in his life because he's doing something that he absolutely loves. So I had him as an example. And so, he couldn't really tell me don't do it because he's done the same thing. But I think my parents probably raised me to just make sure that I'm being that I know the background to the decisions that I'm making. And so do your research, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into, have your facts, and then make the decision you need to make. And if you still, need to make a decision based on intuition or whatever, then go for it. But do it knowing all of the landscape, not kind of, I never go into a decision not not having my facts straight, basically.
Yeah.
So at least then if I bugger it up, it's my own fault.
Yeah. What if there's a little voice running through people's heads and they go, but what if I make this decision and in 1 year's time or 3 years' time, it's not what I want to do? What would your response to that be?
I'd say do it anyway, because the best, I love that quote, is that it's really, what is it? It's hard to join the dots looking forwards.
Yeah.
But it's much easier to join the dots looking backwards. So you might think that a year.
Quote, you know who said that quote?
Steve Jobs, was it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's you can look at a year and go, that was a wasted year. But I can guarantee you that in whatever you do in that year, that you will learn. And it's only a wasted year if you throw away the learning and you don't take something from the learning from that experience. It's like my theatre degree. I spent 2 years studying theatre, and I did one show after I finished my my theatre diploma, and I never went back to it. But I use theatre all the time. I use the skills I learned in that course all the time, and I think it makes me a much more confident presenter. It makes me confident with people. It makes me empathetic with people. And yeah, it was absolutely not wasted. You know, everything that I've done has been, it's kind of like it helps create the puzzle that is you. And, you know, it's just another piece clicking into place that's going to lead you to where you really need to go. And it's kind of a bit like a choose your own adventure. It's like, you know, you go one way instead of the other way, and it takes you off in a certain direction, and then you reach another fork in the road and that takes you in another direction. And who's to say which direction is the best direction until you get there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think one mistake that people can make, and, you know, I don't say many things are a mistake, but I think it's a mistake to compare yourself against other people. Oh, that person's
totally,
or anything like that. My dad said to me one time when I was few years ago, I was like, oh, my boss currently has, you know, this amount of dental practices and stuff like that, and that's what I want to be like. And he's like, mate, if you compare yourself to that, you're going to be miserable for your entire life. And I'll hold on to that, because it really just gave me a sense of relief. And even so, like anyone that I know that goes and studies a degree and they decide that that's not something that they want to do and they make a change, I don't think I've met anyone that says I regret doing that. My dad calls it sliding doors, but I call it taking positives, as you say. You know, taking the learning experience out of it. We're all on our own journey. Let's not compare ourselves to anyone else. And you know, we've got the fundamentals. We've got a roof over our head. We've got good relationships with our families. What's important in our lives? Do we really need the money that quickly? I think because perhaps we might grow up and never think we might not be exposed to money. We think that's kind of, you know, that's what we need. But then when you actually get it, you realize that, oh, well, this isn't really all it's cracked up to be. And it hasn't given me a true sense of fulfillment. You know, when I was in dental school, my second last year, I spoke to this girl. I was like, oh, you know, I think I cried at one point. Like, oh, I don't know if I want to be a surgeon or go and be a general dentist, open my practice. I don't know if I want to go and be a surgeon, study for more years. She's like, why not? She's like, you can do it. She's like, it's not all about the money and things like that. So that kind of...
Actually, reflecting on the money-making side of things, like I've probably earned close to half of what I earned, you know, a number of years ago this year. And I am so much happier. I'm so much more fulfilled. I would not change I wouldn't change it for the world, the money that I'm making now versus then, for the experience of life that I have now. It's just, you know, we spend, like, when we ask people what they want in life, it's like, I want to be happy, you know, or the classic one is asking people what they want for their kids, or even imagining if you had kids, like, what would you want for your kids? And it's always like happiness, health, fulfillment. And so, and, you know, I have that now, and I have it for less money, and I couldn't care less because life is good. But yeah, back to in terms of the changing and should you change. The other thing I would say is that I don't know many people who are still doing the thing that they studied first time around at uni. And I mean, there's definitely people out there, but if I go through most of my friends, they're not studying, they're not working in the thing that they studied in. And part of that is because they've made changes, but part of that is also because degrees don't necessarily line up directly to jobs these days. You know, there's not necessarily, like, I couldn't have gone and done a degree that would give me the job that I have now in the way that I have it, because there is no degree that's about being a coach, a meditation teacher, and, you know, a leadership facilitator, which are kind of three of the things that I do. You cannot do a degree for that job or that combination of elements. So, so it's to say that, but am I going to change and am I going to have wasted the time that I spent? No, it's just another string to your bow that's going to create that picture of who you are later in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of students as well, you know, that come straight out of high school and they go and study, for example, something like medicine. A lot of the times they don't know that that's what they truly want to do. They still haven't fully discovered what they like and what they dislike.
Oh, totally, yeah.
They get this pressure perhaps partially from their parents. There's an expectation, but it's a real pressure. You want to make your parents proud. You know, your dad's, you know, your biggest hero, and your mum's your biggest hero. And you want them to look over you with pride and well done. It's a real pressure. You know, I guess, you know, a lot of the time, and I know dentists the same thing. They get out. First thing they do is they go to dental school or medical school, graduate, achieve everything under the sun, and they get to it. They're like, oh, all right, I got the money, X, Y, Z, but kind of want to do something that's really makes my heart sing and really brings me a sense of purpose and fulfillment. And I mean, a great example is what I'm doing now. Is I've been mentoring young adults for the last 4 or 5 years, and I love it. And it gives me so much joy and satisfaction. And it actually, I certainly don't make any money out of it. It costs me money, happily, to do that. But it really just makes me feel good. And to see other people flourish and to learn about yourself during the process. I'm sure you learn a lot about yourself.
Oh, so much. Yeah.
Can you give me some examples of, you know, like, you know, when you've spent time with kids and taken a lot out of it? Do you feel good afterwards when you work with these young individuals?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And look, to be honest, I don't work as much with younger people. Like most of the people I work with, I tend to be a bit older, but I do have a couple of clients at the moment now who I almost forget that they're younger because they're so beyond their years. But absolutely. And I think, you know, when you have that life experience, being able to share that with someone who hasn't, it's incredibly valuable. And if I look back particularly at the mentors that I had when I was younger, gosh, like they've been so key to my personal growth, my professional growth. Like I wouldn't be where I am right now if it wasn't for the mentors that I had. And I think it's such a lovely kind of circle of working life when you can give back to younger people or people who are less experienced. And this is the other thing too. It's not always younger people. It can just be people who are less experienced, because we're starting to see more and more these days that, you know, people do change jobs midway through their lives and they all of a sudden become the junior, not because of age, but because of experience. So, like I definitely enjoy kind of mentoring other coaches as well, and kind of people who are just getting into coaching and helping them with that and helping them understand the landscape and all that kind of thing. So, yeah.
I just get off on setting goals and achieving them, and I get off on seeing other people achieve their goals. And you know, I wouldn't say a large proportion, you know, what is an aggressive goal seeker, but when I see an aggressive goal seeker there, nothing gives me more satisfaction than seeing them go out and chase it. And if they want it bad enough, they'll get it. And to be able to not provide them with advice, to allow myself to be a sounding board for them to figure it out themselves, and ask them open-ended question and let them figure it out. It's great to just act as like a sounding board or a set of ears or a tool for them to kind of deconstruct or demystify what appears to be an enigma of how to get to a goal. There's a way to get there, and you don't have to know how to get there. You have to know there's a goal, and you'll figure it out. You're never going to have a perfect plan. You're going to get your speed bumps and your X, Y, Z. But that hunger, and it's just, I can't think of anything that makes me feel more elated than seeing others achieve that, because I'm still on my goals. I'm still very much focused and have my goals set. And I love just kind of buddying up with anyone, whether they're 12 years old or 50 years old, and saying, how do you plan on getting to your goals? This is how I'm going to get to my goals, sharing it out and growing together. It's such a wonderful feeling. And it's something that money can't buy, that organic emotion.
Yeah, totally. Goal setting's a really interesting one, because, people would probably think as a coach that I'm like super into my SMART goals, and that's specific, measurable, achievable, relatable, and timely SMART goals. But I'm actually not. I've never really been inspired by the real kind of achievement-based goals. But what I've recently worked out is that I'm more inspired by goals that are kind of about the person that I'm wanting to become. So, for example, one of my goals at the moment is to be the best coach that I can be, which is not specific, it's not measurable, it's not all of those things. But gosh, I find that way more inspiring, because it's about developing myself, and that's far more aligned with my values. And I think, for young people out there, like, sometimes you can see people who are really goal oriented and just go, that's awesome for them, but I just don't feel that passion towards something specific like that. And if that's the case, I say, like, that's totally fine. But what do you want to get better at? Who do you want to be in the world? What kind of person do you want to be? Like, what are your values, and are you living by those values? And how can you begin to shift your life so that you're becoming more and more and more aligned with the values that you want to live? And I think, that can be another beautiful way to, quote unquote, set goals that's a bit different, that's kind of less, I suppose less on like big shiny outcomes, because we talked about the whole hustle thing earlier. I think, goal setting can get really like that too. And I don't think, I should just say, I don't think it, I'm
a slave to it, and stop enjoying the moment, the process, kind of doing it. I feel that what you're saying, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I am, correct me if I'm mistaken, but what you're saying is that you want to really achieve those goals in the moment because you want to, and you don't want to feel like you have to, kind of thing. You get kind of sidetracked by this. All right, you hold yourself to such a high, and you go, oh, my past self 2 weeks ago set this goal, and I have to please him.
That's right. It can be really performance based.
I was like that for many, many years. And it really took me a trip to Europe last year to think, what? Once upon a time, I had a certain goal, and now it's not like that. What are you doing at the moment? Can I ask you? I mean, what things are you doing to become the best coach that you can? Are you doing any daily practices? Are you doing any regular studies, CPD, continuing?
So I'm doing a new coaching course at the moment. So I originally studied my coaching back in 2014 and 15. So I've been coaching for a number of years, and so decided to start a new coaching course. So I'm just coming to the end of that. That's been kind of a 8-month journey, which has been really awesome. So really, that's been really kind of deepening my coaching practice and my knowledge, and also deepening my knowledge of areas that are relevant to coaching. So things like, for example, like sleep or habits, or getting a better knowledge of that kind of stuff too. I have a coach mentor. So she's a more experienced coach than me. And I work with her, once every 1 or 2 weeks to kind of talk about my coaching practice. I keep a coaching practice journal, or diary, or whatever you want to call it, which is basically a book where I reflect on my own coaching. After sessions, I'll do things like I have pages that are like what I did well, or learnings, or particular processes for certain things in the coaching or things I learn or all kinds of stuff in there.
Yeah.
What else? I mean, it's included, the way that I kind of mapped this out was going, okay, well, what does it look like to be the best coach I can be? And it fell out into a number of areas. And it was, so there's my actual coaching and how the practice of coaching. There's the business side of coaching. And am I building my business? There was the customer experience or the client experience side of that. So yeah, there were a whole bunch of elements. So other things I'm working on are, building up my practice so that I have more ongoing clients, improving my processes. So there's a whole raft of things that fit underneath that.
Yeah, wow. So there's that, continuing development, desire to be better and learning new things. And so you're doing that. Are you doing that course online or?
Yeah, it's mostly online. There's online learning modules, but then there's live calls and buddy calls as well, where we buddy up with other people and coach each other and things. So yeah,
it's such a fascinating topic, and it's a topic I can talk about all day. Is goal setting and how to become the best version of yourself. And I think no coach, there's no better coach than someone who's also trying to better themselves as well as helping others and, walking the walk. So it's tremendous. And
and I'm a massive lifelong learner, personal development junkie. It's just, it's part of who I am. And, one of my highest values is kind of learning and growth. And so it's a big part of my life. Yeah,
me too. And for me, the reason why I like to learn is because if I can pick up any nuggets, any Tim Ferriss-like life hacks to make my life easier, to make my quality of life better, then that just makes things more enjoyable for me, because my ultimate mantra or goal currently is to live my best life. And as far as we know, this may only be one life. So why not give it a crack and make it your absolute best? And to make it your best, why not gloss over some distilled and crystallized wisdom that other more experienced people have summarized into such a succinct little summary? And if you can get a little tidbit here and a little nugget there and use that to craft your life, design your life to the way you want it. I just think life's too short not to do that.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Yeah. But it's really I think the part of the, the challenge of that is working out what you really want.
Yeah.
Because I think you can go off designing a life in one direction, and if it's not really what you want, then you can kind of go off to designing the wrong thing. So I think it takes a while to work that out. And you were saying as well, this it's a podcast for younger people, and I would say at the same time, it's really hard to have it figured out as a young person. So if you don't have it all figured out and you're not sure what you want, that's totally okay. And take your time and just be curious and play and explore and get your teeth into whatever you can get your teeth into and see what sticks, because gosh, we don't know when we're young. We've got no, there are some people that do, I will say, and it's often the people who are the doctors, the lawyers, the people who've got, but for most of us, it's that's not what the journey looks like. And so, it's hard to have it all figured out when you're young. And I would say, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I would say the years between about 25 and about 28 or 29 are massively transformational. And that's kind of where I think I really learnt who I was. You're absolutely learning the whole way along, but I think there's a shift that really happens for most people somewhere within that time frame. And so, if you're younger than that and you're still unsure, I'm don't worry about it. Just keep playing.
Yeah, keep playing and don't compare yourself to others. And, like Kate, at the same time, we need to acknowledge the fact that, our future selves will look back one day and see us as children as well. So we're, still, as you say, ever learning students, and we're not always right, and we don't profess to have the answers. But let's just explore different ideas and see what makes us tick and makes our hearts sing. And you never know what tomorrow will bring.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what we do have is the right now, the present and the moment. Let's continue to enjoy the moment and just be grateful. And life's, it's a gift. It's a gift. When the sperm fertilizes the egg, it's a one in a few billion or one in a few trillion chance. So I personally call it the fertilization lottery. But, you know, I mean, here's my question as well: is what's the alternative way to look at it? You know, if anyone knows a more elating, superior alternative to look at life, please let me know, because I just can't think of a more satisfying reality to look at the lens of life through, as a lens of gratitude, and just think, hey, shit, we got a roof over our heads. You got a, you know, if you're lucky enough to have a blanket and a heater. I saw a photo got sent to me yesterday of a kid in a third world country chewing off meat off another human's leg for food.
Wow.
That's graphic. It's confronting, but it's real. Like, let's put things in perspective here.
Yeah.
So it's been such an absolute pleasure to talk to you. You're an absolute legend. And I'd like to discuss perhaps a little bit further with you about, you know, if there are any young female individuals that do want to speak to someone as a sounding board. I think I can't think of a more appropriate person than to direct them towards. Where can people find you, Kate McCready?
Yeah, well, if you're a young person, you're probably on the Instagram. You're probably on TikTok, but I'm not on TikTok. So, Instagram, you can find me at Leading Beings. That's Beings, not beans. Sometimes people think I'm saying beans when I say that. You can also find my website, leadingbeings.com, or you can email me, kate@leadingbeings.com as well.
Thank you so much. I feel fantastic after this, and I always feel fantastic after these discussions, and today is no exception. I feel great. Thank you so much for your time, Kate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.